And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. One man, one microphone, one mission, one message. True News, the only newscast reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Here is end-time newsman Rick Wiles.
An emergency evacuation of hydrogen bombs has commenced at Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, according to several European and Middle Eastern news outlets. It is believed that 50 or more hydrogen bombs are stored deep underground in vaults at the U.S. NATO Air Base in Adana, Turkey. The news reports claim that some bombs have already been relocated to Daveselu Air Base in Romania. The air base is near the Romanian city of Karakau. That's northwest of Turkey and southwest of Ukraine. Turkey, Romania, and Ukraine share the border of the Black Sea. Daveselu is the new home of the U.S. Missile Shield, a defense project that has angered Moscow. Stationing hydrogen bombs in Romania will be received in Moscow as another U.S. thumb in the Russian bear's eyes. Israel's Debka.com reported that its military and intelligence sources report that Washington decided to remove the nuclear arsenal to safety after talks broke down between the U.S. and Turkey regarding the release of 1,500 U.S. airmen stationed at the base. According to the Debka report, Turkey was holding the U.S. airmen hostage. The talks ground to a halt over Turkish insistence on assuming full control of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. The 50 to 70 tactical gravity nuclear bombs were stored in underground bunkers close to the U.S. bombers' airstrips, according to Debka. Although this was not fully admitted by Washington, the U.S. air and ground crews were held in lockdown since Erdogan's suppressed a military coup against him. Doc Burkhart is with me here in the studio to discuss this stunning new development. Edward Zoll has been away on assignment. He's flying back to Florida today. We've tracked him down in the Charlotte, North Carolina airport. Doc, if these reports are true, it means the Obama administration is packing up its tents and leaving the Middle East. The implications of this development is staggering.
What I find so shocking about that particular report that you just read is that means that the reason that General Dunford went there was to negotiate the release of our airmen that were there.
That's what it appears, because this is the first published news report that we have seen stating that Turkey was holding the U.S. airmen hostage.
Right.
And General Dunford, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, flew to Turkey immediately after the power was cut off at Incirlik. And in fact, we did a report and we received a phone call from Incirlik giving us some corrected information about what we had reported. But General Dunford was there that day. It does now appear that he went there to negotiate the release of the U.S. airmen.
And now I'm beginning to wonder, remember about a week and a half ago when all the dump trucks and armored cars were backing up, around the gates of the air base?
That was the following week.
Right. I'm beginning to think now we had already begun the transfer of some of those weapons at that point.
Debka is saying that Turkey was demanding full operational control of the nuclear arsenal.
Boy, we called that one, didn't we? Wow.
We were right.
Yeah.
If these reports today are true, then True News was on top of this a month ago.
Yeah. I mean, that almost gives me goosebumps to think that we were that far ahead of this story.
As the United States is surrendering Incirlik, Russia has opened an air base in Iran.
Yes.
Edward Zoll's on the phone. We tracked him down at the Charlotte airport. Hey, Edward.
Yes, both those stories have just shocked me while I've been on the road. One, it confirms everything that think tank report. That think tank report was essentially our report 1 month ago, and we knew the entire time this was about the nukes. And you go to what's happening in Iran, the bombers they've moved there, those are doomsday bombers. Those are their version of the B-52 heavy-duty bombers. They're more like an older, slower version. But it's very significant that Russia has shifted that asset to the Iranian air base.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling what is taking place here today. There literally is a changing of the guard in the Middle East. There's a new sheriff in town. The old sheriff, the United States, has been kicked out. The new sheriff is Putin.
Yes.
He's got the badge today.
Yeah, he really does. He's calling the shots all the way from Romania down to Iran.
And I think you're going to see Israel line up with Russia.
Well, we've already seen some of those indications. We know that Netanyahu's visited Moscow, and we know that Israel and Turkey, even yesterday, announced Israel's making a $20 million payment in lieu of the ship they shot up here. I think, when was that? A couple of years ago? Or
you're talking about the humanitarian aid flotilla. When
yes.
Turkey sent a flotilla to deliver aid for the Gaza Strip.
Right.
And Israeli commandos boarded the ship, and there was a shootout and a lot of stuff. And you're saying that Israel
apologized for it yesterday and
gave them a check of $20 million.
And Turkey voted to receive the check. And so it was an agreement on both sides of the fence there.
I have a feeling that Sheriff Putin is negotiating these things.
It sure appears to be so.
That he's putting into place. He now has Turkey, Iran, and Israel cooperating with each other. It's unthinkable.
Yeah. Something NATO and the U.S. has never been able to do.
And now...
Oh, how do you think this...
Yeah, go ahead, Edward.
How do you think this affects the Masons in that region?
The Masons?
We both read that book. Yeah, we both read that book about the Mason origin in Turkey, in the Ottoman Empire. Does this signify an end to that group, or at least their backing in the West?
Well, it certainly appears that the Western influence is being squeezed out of the Middle East. Now, where Great Britain fits in this, I don't know. But Great Britain and the U.S. are linked together like Siamese twins and all these actions. So, because you got to look at Great Britain as being the mothership of Freemasonry.
Right.
But who knows? Great Britain may switch allegiance.
And you already see today that they're starting to shift their focus again. The reports in Libya are ramping up today. A number of suicide bombings were taking place in Libya. That's one of their other countries on the big list, as we heard about Wesley Clark before talking about. And so they're just going to pivot and focus on something else. That's going to be the problem.
We're not just speculating that Turkey is going to leave NATO and join a Russian, Chinese, Iranian military alliance. This report says Turkish Foreign Minister Cavusoglu has lashed out at NATO, saying that the military alliance is not cooperating with Turkey. This is in an interview with Sputnik News, a Russian news source. Cavusoglu said that Turkey has become alarmed at the lack of willingness shown by NATO to cooperate with Turkey. And here's a direct quote. It seems to us that NATO members behave in an evasive fashion on issues such as the exchange of technology and joint investments. Turkey intends to develop its own defense industry and strengthen its defense system. In this sense, if Russia were to treat this with interest, we are ready to consider the possibility of cooperation in this sector. That's a direct quote from the foreign minister of Turkey. So this is not speculation that Turkey is going to bolt from NATO and join a Russian, Chinese, Iranian military alliance.
It sounds like the deal's already done.
I think the deal was done when the ink dried on that $100 billion Turkish Stream gas pipeline deal. It's really staggering what's taking place, what we are watching. Doc, when sometimes in the evening, I don't know why I do this other than self-torture. It's like mutilating yourself. I'll turn on the television in my home and watch the news networks. I can only take it for about 5 to 10 minutes.
Me too. I feel your pain.
But last night, I'm watching the just stupidity of what they're talking about. It was Fox News with Bill O'Reilly and Dennis Miller, just mindless babble. That's all it was, just mindless babble, just diverting the attention of the viewers. And here we are over here at True News. We've been right for 1 month, telling our audience the United States is going to get kicked out of the Middle East. We're losing the Incirlik Air Base. 50 or more hydrogen bombs are there. This is dangerous. This is serious, folks. We were right. And now, maybe, who knows, the establishment news media may acknowledge it in some way.
Well, as of an hour ago, before the broadcast began today, we were the only North American news outlet reporting on this transfer of nukes. We were the only one. There's not CNN, not MSNBC, not even the Hoboken Town Gazette. Nobody.
And none of the alternative news media was talking about it. We've had this thing to ourselves for a month. Here's another quote from Cavusoglu, the Turkish foreign minister. Quote, Turkey wanted to cooperate with NATO, but the results we got did not satisfy us. Therefore, it is natural to look for other options. End of quote. Doc, he's saying Turkey wanted to cooperate with NATO. Wait a minute. You are NATO.
That's right.
Turkey is a member of NATO. This is treason against the NATO charter. It's not like they applied for membership, like Turkey was shopping for a deal. Turkey was inside NATO. That's the problem when you bring a Muslim nation into your sphere of friends, your circle of friends. You can't trust them.
And even still today, Merkel, the German Chancellor Merkel, is still working with Turkey to bring in more immigrants from Turkey. And I don't know if you caught this today or not, Pastor Rick, but she said in a statement, she hopes that we can lift the sanctions on Russia soon. So I'm beginning to think, is there another crack in the NATO wall happening there?
Yeah, Germany's going to switch. Jim Willey has been telling us for years that Germany is going to switch over and align with Russia.
The only conditions she put on it was as long as we're all playing by the Minsk Accord in the Ukraine. So basically, she's saying if we can just settle things down in the Ukraine now, then we can lift the sanctions on Russia.
What in the world is Merkel doing? She's Islamifying her own country. What is she doing?
But to come out now and say, yeah, let's talk about lifting sanctions on Russia after all this is playing out over this past week. Is there another crack in the NATO wall?
There is, but I'm trying to figure out why she has agreed to Islamify her own country.
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that these refugees wouldn't necessarily be citizens. she's bringing in serfs. She's bringing in workers, people who wouldn't necessarily have the right to vote, people that would be underlings.
I know, but Edward, it's the clash of civilizations in Germany is causing social unrest.
Well, I never said she was sane. Her plans might be as insane as she is, you know.
Several Moscow-based EU diplomats say Russia's tactic of methodically lobbying southern and eastern EU member states is starting to seriously erode the NATO bloc's utility on the Ukraine issue, as well as Turkey, making it potentially harder to renew them next time for membership.
You know, when I look at this, I think all of them, to Germany, to the U.S., to France, even to England, they were completely blindsided by Turkey's decision. That's probably why it looks like it's not a coherent response or strategy on any of their parts. I don't think they expected Turkey to do this. This is a huge hit to any further operation in the Middle East. For the U.S. to launch, for example, another Iraq or even another Syria with a proxy force, they need a country like Turkey to have as an air base, have as a supply route. I mean, who do they have left? Saudi Arabia? I mean, Saudi Arabia themselves are financially in dire straits. Can you think of another country in the Middle East that would house U.S. forces like Turkey has?
None.
No.
And speaking of Saudi Arabia's financial dire straits, a week or two ago, the Saudi Central Bank loaned, $4 billion to Saudi banks to keep them solvent.
Wow.
And it's
And
Saudi Arabia. Who would imagine the Saudi Arabian banks would be insolvent? But you're right, Edward. The U.S. doesn't have another place to go. Hey, here's the Telegraph, London. China is to step up military training and assistance to the Syrian government. Chinese state media reported in a signal of growing concern in Beijing about the course of Syria's civil war. Chinese Rear Admiral Wan, who heads China's Office for International Military Cooperation, met with the Syrian defense minister in Damascus this week. The Chinese military is willing to strengthen cooperation with its Syrian counterparts. The defense agency was quoted as saying. So, Edward, now we have the Chinese officially entering Syria. This has never happened before.
no.
I mean, in modern history, we don't know of anything where Chinese military troops have been in the Middle East.
Yeah, this is opening for the Asian window here. I mean, really. And I think it all comes back, what we talk about so often, Pastor Rick. It's oil, which equates to money, which creates power. And right now, this is the area of the world to control.
Hey, listen to this. The Chinese Global Times, which is a newspaper owned and controlled by the Communist Party, said Chinese military advisors are already on the ground in Syria, training Syrian forces in the use of Chinese weapons, including rifles, rocket launchers, and machine guns.
So there's...
It's a confirmation that Tiger Force, the anti-terrorism force that the Chinese government had formed last year, it's a confirmation that at least advisors from that group had been sent. We heard that China was planning to send troops, and then, as you mentioned, it's never happened before. China has never deployed soldiers to the Middle East before.
I mean, is it safe at this point to say that the U.S. Western CFR Freemason Bilderberg Trilateral Commission scheme to use jihadists called ISIS in Syria to bring down the Syrian government? Is it safe to say now that scheme has completely failed? I mean, where do they go from now? Are they going to take on Chinese and Russian troops?
No, it's done. And Henry Kissinger saw that when he went to go visit Vladimir Putin in December of last year. I think maybe he saw the writing on the wall, but the rest of the NATO alliance did not see it. Did you remember that meeting we talked about?
Yes. Well, do you remember Jim Willey's source told us that Kissinger went there to basically beg for the lives of certain globalist elite not to be snuffed out by the new sheriffs.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jim said that.
He was, he was told that the real meeting, the real purpose of that meeting between Kissinger and Putin was that the Bush-controlled faction of the New World Order wanted basically a peace treaty. Don't kill us. We'll capitulate if you promise not to wipe us out.
If they weren't so evil, you'd almost feel bad for them. Their son can get the presidency. They've lost their vast empire in the Middle East. I mean, they've had a tough year.
They really have. Russian bombers struck ISIS again for the third day from that Iranian air base. Of course, the reports that we read yesterday was referring to that base as the Russian base in Iran. It's no longer an Iranian air base. It's now a Russian air base inside Iran.
That's right.
And the Syrian Air Force bombed the Kurds today.
Yes. The Kurd connection there. I mean, the Kurds, they occupy parts of Syria, parts of Turkey, parts of northern Iraq. I mean, they were at one time their own country, and they got split up, when, they divided everything up with imaginary lines in the sand.
The Kurds have been betrayed by every power in the world.
Yeah.
So now the Russian, Iranian, Turkish, Chinese alliance is now against the Kurds.
And who's arming the Kurds? Who is arming the Kurds from yesterday's program? Germany. Remember, they're ramping up their military aid to the Kurds again?
That's right. But this is a losing strategy. They're losing on every front.
And the Russian foreign ministry lady today, when she was giving her update, she also telegraphed something else, and I didn't know if you caught this or not, Pastor Rick. She said, Saudi Arabia needs to quit bombing civilian targets in Yemen.
Who said this?
The foreign ministry spokesman for Russia today, when they were doing their press conference, said that Saudi Arabia needs to quit bombing civilian targets in Yemen. So I'm betting that there's going to be a move with Yemen soon as well. If you tie Yemen into that alliance as well, you've got the southern tip of the Gulf there, and you've got control there as well.
Because the Yemen war is another proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, it also hurts China. China has a very large military base / economic base in Africa, right across the ocean from that Yemen front. So they'd much prefer it to be peaceful for trade.
Putin has really done a job. He really has. I mean, he has pulled something off here in a big, big way.
We go back to what I said yesterday, and the question I asked, the damage that's done in the Middle East to the United States, it is either the result of Obama's incompetence or the result of his malicious intent. Because the Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry policy has failed, not just in one area, but the entire Middle East, and the balance of power has now tipped. We're watching this happen in the closing weeks of the summer of 2016. The United States of America is being evicted from the Middle East.
Pastor Rick, what is your gut telling you? I mean, which one is it?
Doc, my cynicism about these politicians wants me to say malicious intent. But then sometimes I think that's giving too much credit to these guys' intelligence. Maybe they really are dumber than we know. We keep giving them credit for, creating these diabolical, wicked plans, these conspiracies. Maybe they really are dumber than
dirt.
Because they've lost the Middle East.
Yeah. It will take decades or centuries to repair the damage that has been done.
Oh, it'll be a century.
It'll
be a century.
There's been such a shift here in power. No wonder the Saudis are looking to cash out.
Erdogan is now seizing major businesses that he has accused of helping to finance the coup. Two of these corporations that he seized this week, Doc, are Fortune 500 companies.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. They seized their assets this week.
Wow, that's incredible. So is this the new fascism, the new...
Well, he's cleaning house. I'm not commenting on whether these people are guilty or not, but yesterday we were told he cleaned out the prison cells. He released 38,000 prisoners to make room for 38,000 political prisoners.
That's like a middle American city, the size of a middle American city.
Well, when you're reading that off, I just thought about how many CIA infiltrated businesses there may be inside the country. Because the CIA uses economic infrastructure to develop intelligence networks in countries that they're trying to manipulate and to gain favor in.
Yeah, well, all intelligence agencies do that.
So he could be clearing out Mossad, he could be clearing out German intelligence, French intelligence.
Yes. Basically NATO.
So this is a major change in the world. And people don't even realize it. The modern news media, the current mainstream dumbed-down news media doesn't see it at all. Or if they do see it, they're completely ignoring it.
Well, the only thing that the establishment news media sees are the talking points that their handlers give them every day. We just give too much credit to these news anchormen.
Right. You would think that the biggest story in the world right now is a couple of swimmers getting roughed up at a convenience store in Rio.
That's it. Or something that Donald Trump said.
Doc,
I was reading some research last night about the direction of news in the world, how it's being distributed and accessed and consumed by people. And the stats said that the three biggest news networks in America, Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, the first two, Fox and CNN, their annual budget each for inside their newsrooms, their annual budget, I'm just talking about for the newsroom budget. CNN and Fox News each spend over $800 million a year on their newsroom budget. That's not the entire operational budget of the corporation. It's just the newsroom. Each one is spending over $800 million a year. Now, Doc, here's little true news. Here's little true news. And we've been on top of the Incirlik story for a month. And CNN and Fox have yet to discover that the U.S. has been kicked out of the Middle East.
And we have been kicked out. We just got an update on a story here just a little while ago. Time magazine is confirming U.S. State Department officials saying that $400 million payment was for the release of hostages. Remember, Obama denied it. Josh Earnest denied it.
That's a violation of federal law.
Well, that's not stopping them, is it?
Obviously not.
The State Department says a $400 million cash payment to Iran was contingent on the release of American prisoners. Spokesman John Kirby says negotiations over the U.S. returning Iranian money from a decades-old account was conducted separately from the prisoner talks, but he says the U.S. withheld delivery of the cash as leverage until the U.S. citizens had left Iran. And here we were a couple weeks ago. We were making those connections, talking to folks about it, and saying
they were
over
denying
and over,
it.
and everybody was denying it.
All of them denied it. No connection between the two events.
I'm going with the dumber than dirt theory.
It's possible. It really is possible. It seems like the only thing that they excel in is the ability to lie.
And the ability to lose friends. I mean, look at the enemies that we've made. We've paid all this money to Iran, right? The United States paid all this money to Iran.
And they joined Russia.
And we're still the devil. So I'm going with the dumber than dirt theory.
Another end of this, too, we have to really keep in mind is one of the benefits that the U.S.'s sphere of influence and empire has had is it's allowed, forms of Christianity to spread. I mean, let's say pre-Darbyism or pre prosperity gospel. Let's say 1950. Around that time, we were able to spread, missionaries throughout the world because of the power of our nation. What happens now that we've lost that position, especially in the Middle East?
Got to raise up another.
Russia.
Yeah.
God will use Russia to bring,
or China. There's more Christians in China than there are in North America. I mean, we're not the Christian nation in the world. We're not. You can say we were founded on Christian principles. We are not a Christian nation. We pump out more pornography than any other nation in the world. We can't be called a Christian nation. We can't.
The Christians in the Western nations have just deceived themselves. It's like, the Anglican Church, which, originated with the Church of England. Doc, there are more people in church every Sunday in the Anglican Church of Nigeria than in England, in Great Britain.
Wow.
So where is the center of the Anglican Church today? It is no longer the Church of England.
No, it's shifted. I mean, and that's happening across several denominations that I can think of, that shift is taking place to the east and to the south.
We're sitting here in these Western nations and we're deceiving ourselves thinking that we're still number one in everything. And it doesn't line up with reality.
No.
Hey, let's move slightly over to Ukraine because all this is connected.
Yes.
A Wall Street Journal reporting Russia is bolstering its military presence on its western border, sending tens of thousands of soldiers to newly built installations within easy striking distance of Ukraine. The moves, which come as Moscow ratchets up confrontations over the Black Sea Peninsula of Crimea, are a centerpiece of a new military strategy the Kremlin says is meant to counter perceived threats from NATO. Military analysts say the deployments appear to be an effort to build a more permanent and robust military posture around Ukraine, where Russia has carried out covert military interventions aimed at maintaining influence in its west-leaning neighbor. So the Western news propaganda flow is that Russia is getting ready to invade Ukraine.
Yeah.
When it's very obvious Russia is moving troops to its western border with Ukraine because they are anticipating a NATO invasion of Russia.
And Poroshenko even said they were getting ready for it a week ago. They said, we're ready to go. We're ready to fight. We're ready to go in and take Crimea back and deliver Crimea.
And right now, today, if these other news stories are correct, the U.S. is moving its hydrogen bombs to Romania next to Russia.
Yeah. I mean, that would be akin to somebody moving nuclear missiles, on the Baja Peninsula off California. I mean, it's just right there.
So will the West dare to stir up trouble in Ukraine, or after losing the Middle East, will they put their tail between their legs and back down?
Well, I think based on Merkel's comments earlier today, kind of giving a little bit of a hint, saying, hey, if we can kind of get everybody on board with the Minsk agreement from last year, where we can calm everything down. So she's already put an olive branch out so much, saying, yeah, we will, Russia wants the sanctions off. They want to do business. They want to make some money just like everybody else. And so she put that olive branch out saying, okay, well, we'll drop the sanctions if we can kind of settle things down in the Ukraine. And so I think, that crack is it's really amazing to watch this. You see how God uses nations.
Doc, do you remember when you came to work with True News several years ago? Chris Steinley and I did a number of programs on the topic of the perestroika deception.
Yes, I remember that.
The perestroika deception, the purpose was to capture the minds of the American people. But its second chief aim was the breakup of NATO.
And that would be a key thing.
That's what's taking place right now.
So
NATO is breaking up.
And Russia has been strategically doing that by lobbying the southern and eastern countries.
They've been working this plan for a long time.
And that's why we're ramping up the military on the border with Russia.
Yes.
Well, an interesting part of that is it wouldn't have been possible without neocons like John McCain, John Kerry, Harry Reid, and Lindsey Graham. Is it possible they were unknowingly working a plan for the Russians?
Well, you want to explain? I don't know where you're going with that.
Well, so I've been reading all this stuff about John McCain these last 2 weeks, and you go back down to where and what started the war in the Middle East. The war in the Middle East was pushed for in the 90s by the Bushes, the Cheneys, and a young John McCain and other what I'd refer to as neocons. And you look at how the Russians have used the U.S. especially overplaying and overextending their hand in the Middle East to their advantage. I mean, they played on the fact that they know the U.S. is pot committed. They know that we are committed with force and infrastructure. All they had to do, in one sense, was to keep us involved in a never-ending cycle of war in the Middle East. Maybe it was to our own, but what we wanted to be at war, but the Russians have played the hand of being the savior in this regard. And, I pray, obviously, that the U.S. And NATO doesn't accelerate this, but unfortunately, I think case precedent is going to show the U.S. may go forward with it. They may say, to save face, they may keep escalating the situation.
The other story that's taking place this week is the implosion of Manafort, Donald Trump's campaign director.
Right.
I mean, suddenly he just imploded. The London Times ran a hit piece on Manafort, Paul Manafort, and they tied him into Ukraine.
Right.
That he was involved in advising the former president of Ukraine. The current president is Poroshenko, who is pro-U.S., pro-NATO. The president before him was Viktor Yanukovych, who was pro-Russia. Yanukovych was pushed out of power by a fascist Nazi revolution that the U.S. State Department and John McCain and Lindsey Graham supported. So it was a U.S. engineered coup. And Yanukovych left town. He had to leave the country, to get away from the mob. But again, John McCain went to Kiev, I think it was December of 2013, and told the mobs, if you overthrow this government, you can count on the support of the USA.
And remember, there was that unholy alliance. You had John McCain going over and Joe Biden going over there.
Yes. Joe Biden's son ended up getting a job with the new government.
Right.
Well, he got a good business deal. Oh, all the people that came into that government, they truly were Nazis and fascists. And I'm not exaggerating it. The prime minister was a high-ranking member of the Church of Scientology and a close confidant of George Soros. George Soros's Open Society is it's headquartered in Ukraine. That's where it's legally founded.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
No, I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
So anyhow, Manafort was a political advisor to the previous president. So the London Times did this hit piece that insinuated that Manafort benefited from slush funds.
Right.
Manafort's reply was, look, I did consulting work. I got paid. I didn't do anything illegal. Your article even says nothing illegal took place. But the London Times simply insinuated. This is the way the news media does things. They'll say in the article there was no illegality, but then the rest of the article implies that there was illegality.
Right.
And that's what they did to Manafort. Well, who owns the London Times?
Rupert Murdoch.
Rupert Murdoch. Who owns the Wall Street Journal? Who owns Fox News? Earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal published an editorial telling Trump to withdraw from the race. Rupert Murdoch, owner of Fox News, is working behind the scenes for Hillary Clinton. Don't trust anything you hear on Fox News. They're working for Hillary Clinton.
But Pastor Rick, they're conservative.
Yeah, right. Sure.
They're fair and balanced.
Right, sure. And Rupert Murdoch makes millions peddling pornography in Europe. What's your point, Doc? I mean, Christians have fallen for this big lie for decades here in the United States with Fox News. Wake up, people. Wake up and realize they're playing you for fools. So anyhow, this report came out in the London Times. Suddenly, Manafort was demoted. And now they're making him out. I saw articles today, Edward, that was implying that Manafort they came very close to accusing him of treason. That he
treason.
Is very, very close. They didn't use the word treason, but they implied that he was an agent, a propaganda agent of Putin, and that he was planted in the Trump campaign by Putin.
By Putin.
Do you see where they're going with this? Think of what the Democrats have been saying all summer.
The Russians, yeah. The
Putin
Russians hacked us.
He's hacked our computers. He's manipulating the election. Now it's the campaign manager of Trump's campaign is a Russian agent. They are even now insinuating that General Flynn is a Russian stooge. I am not kidding you, Doc. I'm not kidding you. The left-wing news organizations are insinuating that General Flynn is a Russian stooge. We've got a soundbite here. I've not heard this. You did, of General Flynn. Was he on Fox?
Yes.
Talking about Russia and Iran? Let's listen to what he said.
General, let's talk about Russia. There is a lot of tension there between Ukraine, between Russia. There are also growing concerns about Russia's growing coziness with Iran, the operations there as well. And there are questions about Mr. Trump, Paul Manafort, a part of the campaign, their relationships with various individuals in Russia as well. What can we expect on that front? Do you think that there is a plan also for dealing with that very tenuous relationship, which is critical to things from Syria to Iran and beyond?
Yeah, so all this noise about Russia and Paul Manafort and frankly even myself is just nonsense. And we did talk about Russia today, and I won't get into any of the specifics. Russia does not have the same perspective and the same belief in the way the world ought to work as we do. And everybody needs to understand that. Russia, at times, though, Russia's deeply involved in the Middle East. And one of the things that we have to recognize is how do we work in a smart way, in an effective way, to be able to operate and to deal with this problem of radical Islamism. I mean, we have to stop kidding ourselves. I think most of your audience has seen some of the actions from the Russians just recently flying out of Iran, as an example, and conducting operations into Syria. So there's a problem. Russia's part of this problem. We have to figure out ways that we're going to have to deal with them in some cases to be able to solve this rapidly expanding problem of radical Islamism, as well as what's happening in the Middle East, but as well as what's happening right here in the homeland. So again, good discussions. Going in, my expectations were that I would walk away knowing that we have a problem and that problem's not getting any better.
General Flynn, much on the plate for the next president, whoever he or she may be. Thank you for your service to this country and for making time for us today, sir.
So he's no fan of Russia by any means.
No, and he ran the Defense Intelligence Agency, and Obama fired him because General Flynn insisted on using the term radical Islam.
Right.
He was forced out of director of the Defense Intelligence Agency because of political correctness.
So he has to give proper, credit to Russia for calling radical Islam for what it is.
That's right. I saw one news article today that mentioned him in regards that Donald Trump was going to be given an intelligence briefing by the U.S. government.
And that's part of what this interview was about as well, because he was part of that.
Okay, so the article that I saw, it said Trump to take pro-Russian advisor to intelligence briefing. And I opened it up to see who is the pro-Russian advisor that was being taken to this intelligence briefing, and it's General Flynn.
Oh, my word.
This is what the left is doing to him.
So you heard that clip, folks. General Flynn is not a fan of Russia, and yet here the media is.
But he's realistic.
Yeah.
He's realistic. He knows you've got to deal with them. And he's saying, we could work together to take out ISIS.
So the DNC, the Democrats, Hillary, they've painted Russia as the bad guy, Russia as the enemy. Radical Islam isn't the bad guy. Terrorism isn't the bad guy. It's Russia.
Can you believe that Hillary Clinton, who was a protege of communist Saul Alinsky, who her first job out of college was working for a communist law firm, who has a communist, trail behind her for decades, that she is running for president on an anti-Russian platform.
Saul Alinsky be spinning in his grave.
He'd be laughing in his grave, laughing that this is working. Okay, all this talk about Russia hacking the American elections,
right?
And I'm more worried about Obama hacking the American elections than Putin. I don't know if you heard this today. The U.S. government is offering to help U.S. states protect the November election from hacking. Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson, and let me add, his grandfather was investigated by the FBI for being a Soviet communist agent. Never forget who's running Homeland Security, the grandson of a Soviet agent. Jay Johnson told U.S. state officials on Monday that federal cybersecurity experts could scan for vulnerabilities in U.S. voting systems and provide resources to help protect against infiltration. So you know what Homeland Security is going to say? Give us your passwords. Give us the back door into your electronic voting system.
So we can, quote, protect you, unquote.
We'll protect you from the Russians.
Wow. We're the federal government. We're here to help you. Run.
He referred to polling places as that they could be. Now listen to the doc. This is important. He said Homeland Security could classify polling places as strategic assets.
Why is that significant?
Because that puts them on the same par as power stations and nuclear facilities.
So they can be federalized, protected by federal troops and federal resources?
By federal mandate, jurisdiction.
Well, it means the votes.
What's that?
It means the votes have to go through DHS also.
Yes, the votes would have to go through DHS to be purified, to be, authenticated. You got it, Edward. You got it. They're going to nationalize the local polling places. I can't make it up, Doc. You just can't make up this stuff.
If I would have told you these stories a year ago, would you have laughed at me?
Honestly, sometimes I think we should just sit down some night and make up the craziest stories and put it in a time capsule.
And then open it up a year later and see what happens.
And see which one's crazier, what we wrote or what's actually happening a year from now. Hey, one final crazy story, because we don't want Edward to miss his flight. I need him back here in the morning. Edward, the story that you and I that True News had, and we didn't run with it. We had the story weeks ago. We did not run with it because we were trying to authenticate the story because we did not want to put something out that was fake. Edward, the European media is running today with the stories about the human sacrifice filmed inside CERN in Switzerland. Now, they're saying there was not an actual human that was killed, but they are verifying that there was a mock human sacrifice ceremony conducted inside the CERN facility.
Yeah, when I read that, you sent it to me while I was in flight actually, and I mean it's not even a good thing that it was a fake sacrifice. They're talking about they did this in the courtyard of CERN, and they're admitting to doing this quote unquote fake occult ritual inside a scientific field that's already been accused of being highly occultic, with that large statue of Shiva, and again the weird noises, the rumors of weird noises we hear from inside there. That the premise is that they admitted to doing a fake ritual. I was blown away when I read that story.
And they were calling it a prank by these guys. Now, to me, in my mind, a prank is putting manure in a paper bag and lighting it, and running. That's a prank.
But Doc,
a human sacrifice isn't a prank.
I thought they were going to say that this was a prank by, some teenage Satanists that sneaked in and pulled off this prank and got away with it.
No, not at all.
They're saying their scientists did it.
Yeah, that no one can get in and out of the CERN facility and campus without security clearance. So these were educated, intelligent, somewhat supposedly intelligent people that performed a mock human sacrifice. At least we're told it's a mock human sacrifice.
The spokeswoman for CERN said scientific users of the Geneva facility let their humor go too far by staging an occult ritual.
Yeah, and you tie this in with the Gothard Tunnel story that we did a couple months back. Pastor Rick, how crazy is all of this? How crazy? If I would have told you, Pastor Rick, you know what's going to happen a year from now? There's going to be a mock human sacrifice right in front of the goddess Shiva on the campus of CERN. And you would have said, Doc, I'm going to call the crazy guys over to lock you up.
It is a bizarre story. My interpretation of this starts with you have to throw out the widely accepted American evangelical biblical theory on the millennium, which is that there will be 1,000-year reign from Israel in the Middle East after Jesus Christ returns. That's the standard American eschatological view about the 1,000 years mentioned in Revelation 20. The traditional view that has always been taught in the church has been that the Revelation 20 refers to 1,000 years is a figure of speech.
An indeterminate time.
An undetermined time, and that the reign of Christ on earth is through his church between the resurrection and ascension and the second coming. That therefore we would be in that 1,000-year reign right now. Forget the term 1,000, that it's a figure of speech. That is the traditional view of the church. And the traditional view of the Christian church has also taught that Satan is bound during that time and that he is in the abyss. And just before the Antichrist appears, Satan will be loosed from the abyss for a short season. That is the time that the Antichrist terrorizes the world and persecutes the saints, makes war against the saints. My theory is that the Satanists are beckoning Satan to come out of the abyss.
Right.
That's what they want. They're calling to him in the abyss, come forth, Lucifer, come. Now, only God can, only God has the power to decide when the abyss is open and Lucifer is set loose.
But the idea is that Satan is loosed in a way like out on a chain.
Yes.
The more chain is let out, the closer we get
That's
to the
right.
end.
The traditional teaching of the church is that the preaching of the gospel is the chain that restrains him.
And so that the more the gospel is preached, the more the chain gets pulled back.
That's right. And the less that is preached, the more the chain is let out. And so one of two things is happening. Either Satan is getting excited, thinking the church has become weak and is barely preaching the gospel, and this is his chance to get out of the abyss, or we really are at that point in time, and God's going to let him out. He can't get out of the abyss unless God releases him. But when God releases him, Doc, it's over. I'm telling you, we're down to the final, it's the final minutes of mankind. That's when the Antichrist appears. That's when tribulation starts. That's when the persecution of the saints, the war against the saints, that's when it begins. But praise God, that means Jesus Christ's return
Amen.
Is extremely close. But we do now know that the video that True News had weeks ago, we did not release it. We don't have enough staff to verify all the stuff that's coming to us right now.
Yeah, there are things that we get every day, folks, that we want to run with, but we only want to put out things that we can verify, that we can.
That's why Edward's traveling right now. I sent him somewhere to verify a major story that was given to us. We just don't have enough people to verify these things, but we had that video weeks ago. And we could have released it, but we held back because we weren't sure if it was true. We didn't want to put something out and then find out that, somebody made up the video and made it look like it was in CERN.
I mean, because the story itself is so incredible. So if someone
weird.
said to you, you know what, they had a satanic ritual with a human sacrifice in front of CERN the other day. Your mind can't even process that kind of information at times, and you've got to verify it to make sure. And it's like the Gothard Tunnel situation. If we had not seen the video, if someone had just told me, there was a huge satanic ritual that went with an opening of a tunnel in Switzerland, I would have said, what are you talking about? But you saw the video, and you're like, is this real? I mean, even looking at it, you're going to yourself, how can this be true?
And Switzerland spent $10 to $15 million on that ceremony, that satanic ceremony. I mean, it wasn't like some cheap production. It was $10 to $15 million to make that choreographed presentation that lasted for hours.
And there were people complicit in this satanic ritual at CERN. There were people complicit at higher levels, because there's no way at the world's most secure scientific site. I mean, this is supposed to be where they're looking for the God particle, the most important, scientists in the world, the smartest people in the world, all the resources that have been pumped in that hole in the ground.
Yeah, where were the security cameras?
That's a good question.
How do people dressed in black robes carrying a dagger and pretending to be sacrificing a human being, how does that take place in CERN? And no security saw it?
That's why I believe that there was complicity all the way around in this. But, it's at times, Pastor Rick, these stories that we talk about here on True News, some of them are so incredible that it's hard to even digest the truth of them.
Listen to the London Guardian story. This is the London Guardian. It's not, as I read it, you think this is the National Enquirer, but it's the Guardian. No offense to the Enquirer. Enquirer's got some great stuff in it, right?
Yes.
But you just tend to think this would be in the Enquirer. Next to UFO alien ate my baby. But it said, the video shows several individuals in black cloaks gathering in the main square of Europe's top physics lab in what appears to be a reenactment of an occult ceremony. The video includes the staged stabbing of a woman. It is filmed from the perspective of a secret viewer watching from a window above who, as the ceremony reached its climax, lets out a string of expletives and flees with the camera still running. The ceremony appears to have been staged in front of a statue of the Hindu deity Shiva that is on permanent display at the complex, home of the Large Hadron Collider. The whole story's bizarre, Doc.
And then the spokeswoman says, these scenes were filmed on our premises, but without official permission or knowledge. CERN does not condone this type of spoof. So they're saying it was a spoof, which can give rise to misunderstandings about the scientific nature of our work.
Well, it sounds like security's really light at Europe's most top secret scientific lab.
But I'm willing to go even further than that, Pastor Rick. What if there's more going on at CERN than just science? I believe there's a spiritual significance to CERN, and there's a lot of other people that do too. That this gathering of minds and its locale where it is in relationship to other sites in Switzerland as well, that this is a significant point, for the worship of deities besides God.
Makes you wonder what's going on in other laboratories and secret sites, maybe Area 51. What goes on inside these places?
Right. And I just cannot comprehend somebody sitting around and saying, you know what, let's get about 12 or 13 of us together and let's have this big old satanic ritual down in the courtyard, and let's make sure someone sees us filming it. And it's a big old prank and spoof. I mean, my mind can't even comprehend someone even thinking in those terms about pulling off something like that.
Remember, the CERN spokesman did say they don't condone spoofs. They specifically spoofs. She didn't talk about other rituals that may be going on, or the placement of Shiva in the walkway between where people stay in that building.
Yeah,
they may actually condone this kind of stuff.
If CERN didn't put that big Shiva goddess there, maybe it wouldn't attract something like this, right?
Yeah, CERN welcomes every year thousands of scientific users from all over the world, and sometimes some of them let their humor go too far. This is what happened on this occasion.
Well, let's close tonight's program with one more really strange story that shows that people are becoming demon-possessed. I really believe it's rampant right now. This happened here in Florida. We've had another case of human face eating.
Yes, another one.
And I believe the audio that we have here is from a Florida TV station. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, let's listen to it.
Deputies walked into a gruesome scene when they arrived at this house in Tequesta, Florida. They found a severely wounded man lying in the driveway with another man on top of him trying to bite his face off. In the garage, police found the victim's wife also stabbed.
It was very obvious that there was an enormous amount of violence inside that garage, and both victims sustained massive trauma on multiple portions of their body. There were lacerations, stab wounds, and blunt trauma.
The victims, a married couple, were pronounced dead. A neighbor who called 911 was also stabbed but is expected to survive. Police say the crime appeared to be random. They're now testing the suspect for drugs.
We will be doing sampling of his blood to see if there was flocka or bath salts. Both of those are known to cause what we call the excited deliriums. And he did have some indications that we might be working with that. He had taken off some of his clothes, but not all of his clothes.
The suspect is 19-year-old Austin Haroof, a student at Florida State University.
Now, let me understand this, Doc. A Florida couple are killed inside their garage, violently killed. The police are saying that this was a tremendously violent struggle.
Mm-hmm.
The husband and the wife are dead. And when the police got there, the murderer was eating the face of the husband. Is that what I just heard?
Yes. And not only that, and the other reports are indicating that when police arrived, they tried to taser this guy, and they couldn't knock him out. He continued to eat the victim's face while being tased.
And they think he's on drugs. He's demon possessed. We are witnessing the demon possession of people on the street. We're witnessing demon possession of scientists at CERN. This is getting extremely strange. Doc, we were talking about, some Saturday night, just getting a pizza and writing the craziest news for a year from now. I don't think we could top this stuff.
I don't think so either. It writes itself. I mean, it really does.
Really where I think it's going, if I had to make up a news story, I believe that there will be physical manifestations of demons on the streets, and people will walk past them and pretend that they didn't see them. They will. The saints of God will be saying, "Did you see what we just passed?" And everybody else will say, "I didn't see anything." They'll be so afraid. I believe that the Nephilim are the disembodied, or I should say demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. The Nephilim produced by fallen angels and human beings. I believe we're going to see this again. In physical manifestations, in buildings, in streets, and probably on television, and nobody's going to think it's unusual. They're just going to pretend. They're going to go deeper and deeper into a spiritual denial as Satan comes forth.
Yes, and I think the deception is going to get even greater as the technology increases. We had someone in our office just yesterday. It says that the holographic technology that is about to roll out over the next 3 to 5 years is stunning. What he's already seen is stunning, and the technology is skipping so fast.
That will replace the cell telephone.
Yeah,
you just send yourself somewhere to talk to somebody.
Right. And will it get to a point where we cannot distinguish the virtual from the reality?
Well, we've got millions of people there right now, Doc.
Yes.
Look what people are doing with Pokemon. They don't know what's real anymore.
Yeah.
They're going into war veterans cemeteries playing Pokemon. They're going into churches. I read today about a Catholic bishop in Italy who's furious about his Catholic church having, it's one of the sites for Pokemon demons. And, he was just railing about how people are becoming zombies playing Pokemon, and they're coming into his church looking for Pokemon. They're already there, Doc. They don't know what's real anymore.
You know, Pastor Rick, that's why people need True News, really, because you're not going to hear this news anywhere else. I guarantee you will not hear it on Fox. You're not going to hear it on any of the quote conservative networks or anything like that. You certainly won't hear it on any of the Christian networks. You need to have True News.
They're afraid. The Christian networks are afraid to talk about these things. They don't even know about it, Doc. If they knew about it, they'd be afraid to talk about it, but they don't even know about it.
Yeah. Well, that's why we need partners here with us to help us out.
That's right. Well, very soon there's going to be a new version of True News. You're going to see it on television. Our TV studio is almost finished. We're now equipping it with the lighting and the cameras and everything. We have $100,000 to go, and we're trusting the Lord that He'll provide. We know He will. There's no doubt in my mind. Somebody's got to talk about these things. Somebody's got to talk about Jesus Christ coming back. Somebody's got to keep encouraging the saints of God to be strong, to not faint.
Yes.
To keep your faith anchored in Jesus Christ. The world's going to become stranger and more weird as we go.
Yes.
And you are going to need True News. And I'm just absolutely confident, Doc, that this is the divine hour for True News. He's raising us up at this hour. He's giving us increase. He's expanding us. This is the hour that the Lord wants a end-time news network operating. And we have just barely started to grow because the world has just barely got it started into its last final weird stage. And we're going to be reporting on this stuff all the way through. And the main thing is to lead people to the cross and to encourage those who are already saved. That's our main purpose, to get you to the finish line, to hear the words, well done.
Amen.
Jesus Christ is coming back. Don't lose hope. Don't become discouraged. We need to stick together. We need to support each other. We need to lift up each other. He's coming back. But we're going to go through some very, very, very dark and crazy and weird times before He comes back. He said, don't let any man deceive you. And He said, whoever endures to the end shall be saved.
Amen.
So we're going to fight against deception, and we're going to help you endure to the end. On behalf of Doc Burkhart, Edward Zoll, I'm Rick Wiles. We love you. We'll see you tomorrow.